What would you do if your family constantly treated you like you were financially helpless and needed their guidance with money, while secretly planning to take control of your supposedly meager assets? Well, let me tell you what I did when my children discovered I was wealthier than all of them combined, and how their greed exposed their true characters. My name is Betty, and at 70 years old, I had spent decades perfecting the art of appearing financially modest while secretly building wealth that would shock my family and change our relationships forever. For 30 years, I had lived in the same small house, driven reliable but unremarkable cars, shopped at discount stores, and maintained the lifestyle of someone who was careful with money because money was scarce. But appearances, as I had learned long ago, could be wonderfully deceptive. The truth was that I had been investing wisely since my 20s, building a portfolio that had grown through decades of compound interest, smart real estate decisions, and business investments that my children knew nothing about. While they assumed I was living on a modest pension and Social Security, I was actually worth more money than all three of them would earn in their entire lifetimes. The deception hadn't been malicious, it had been protective. I had watched too many families torn apart by money, seen too many elderly people taken advantage of by relatives who viewed inheritance as an entitlement rather than a gift. So I had chosen to live below my means, while my wealth accumulated in accounts and investments that remained invisible to everyone who thought they knew my financial situation. But over the past year, my children's assumptions about my limited resources had evolved into something more concerning: a systematic effort to position themselves as my financial advisors and eventually gain control over what they believed were my modest assets. It started with small observations that seemed helpful rather than controlling. "Mom, you really should be more careful about spending money on dining out," my daughter Patricia would say when she saw restaurant receipts in my kitchen. "At your age, you need to make sure your money lasts." "Mom, maybe you should let me review your monthly budget to make sure you're not overspending," my son Michael would suggest whenever I mentioned buying something new. "I could help you set up a more sustainable financial plan." "Mom, you might want to reconsider these charitable donations," my youngest daughter Jennifer would advise when she noticed my regular contributions to local causes. "You should be saving that money for your own future needs." Each comment, taken individually, seemed like genuine concern from children who wanted to make sure their mother's financial security was protected. But collectively, they painted a picture of a woman who was viewed as financially incompetent and in need of supervision from more capable family members. The pattern escalated when my children began inserting themselves into my financial decisions more directly. "Mom, instead of hiring that expensive contractor for your roof repairs, let me find someone more affordable," Michael offered when I mentioned needed home maintenance. "You don't need to pay premium prices when there are budget options available." "Mom, you really shouldn't be managing your own investments anymore," Patricia suggested after noticing financial statements in my mail. "The stock market is too complicated for someone your age to navigate safely." "Mom, maybe it's time to consolidate your accounts and simplify your financial situation," Jennifer recommended. "I could help you move everything to one bank where it would be easier to manage." Their suggestions were presented as helpful guidance from loving children who wanted to protect their mother from financial mistakes. But I was beginning to recognize a different agenda, a systematic effort to gain access to and control over my financial affairs. The breakthrough moment came during a family dinner at Patricia's house, when all three of my children presented what they clearly believed was a reasonable and necessary intervention. "Mom, we've been talking, and we think it's time to have a serious conversation about your financial situation," Patricia began as we finished dessert. "What about my financial situation?" "Well, we're concerned that you might not be prepared for the realities of aging and the costs that come with it," Michael explained with the patience of someone addressing a confused child. "We think you should let us help you develop a more comprehensive financial plan," Jennifer added. "Something that takes into account your limited income and makes sure your money lasts as long as you do." Limited income. They had decided that I was living on restricted resources that required careful management to avoid poverty in my old age. "What makes you think my income is limited?" My children exchanged looks that suggested they had discussed my financial situation extensively among themselves. "Mom, we know you're living on Dad's pension and Social Security," Patricia said gently. "That's not a lot of money, and we want to make sure you're making smart decisions about how to use it. We're worried that you're not saving enough for emergencies or long-term care costs," Michael continued. "If you need medical care or assistance as you get older, you'll need resources to pay for it. And we think you might be spending too much on things that aren't essential," Jennifer concluded. The donations, the dining out. the shopping, it all adds up, and it might be putting your financial security at risk. My children had created a comprehensive narrative about my supposedly precarious financial situation, and they were presenting themselves as the solution to problems that existed only in their assumptions about my resources. What exactly are you suggesting? We think you should let us help you manage your finances, Patricia said. Set up a budget, review your expenses, make sure your money is invested properly. We could consolidate your accounts and make sure everything is organized and accessible, Michael added. That way, if something happens to you, we'll be able to help manage your affairs. And we think you should be more conservative about spending, Jennifer concluded. Save more, spend less, and make sure you're prepared for whatever challenges come with aging. Their proposal was presented as loving assistance from children who wanted to help their mother navigate the financial challenges of old age. But I recognized it for what it really was, an attempt to gain control over assets they believed were small enough to manage, but large enough to be worth controlling. What my children didn't realize was that their supposedly struggling mother was about to reveal financial resources that would completely change their understanding of who needed help managing money in our family. But before I shared that information, I wanted to understand exactly what had motivated their sudden interest in my financial welfare and what they had been planning to do with the control they sought over my supposedly limited resources. Over the next 2 weeks, I carefully observed my children's behavior to understand the real motivations behind their newfound concern for my financial management. What I discovered was that their interest in helping me had less to do with my welfare and more to do with their own financial problems and expectations about their future inheritance. The first clue came when Patricia mentioned her upcoming divorce during a phone conversation that was supposed to be about my grocery budget. Mom, I hope you're not spending too much on expensive food items, Patricia said as we discussed my weekly lopping. You need to be careful about your expenses, especially with your limited income. Patricia, what made you so concerned about my grocery spending all of a sudden? I've just been thinking about financial responsibility lately. My divorce is getting expensive, and it's made me realize how important it is to be careful with money. Patricia's divorce was indeed expensive. I had heard through family conversations that legal fees and settlement negotiations were creating significant financial strain for her family. Her sudden interest in my supposed financial limitations coincided perfectly with her own need for money and her growing anxiety about legal costs. Patricia, are you having trouble managing your divorce expenses? It's just challenging, Mom. Lawyers are expensive, and splitting assets is complicated. I'm worried about how this is all going to affect our long-term financial security. Have you considered asking for help with legal fees? Patricia's pause before answering was telling. Well, I hadn't wanted to burden anyone, but if you had extra money that wasn't being used for essentials, the conversation revealed Patricia's real agenda. Her concern about my grocery spending wasn't about protecting my financial security. It was about preserving money that she hoped might be available to help with her legal expenses. The second revelation came through Michael's increased attention to my investment accounts and retirement planning. Mom, I've been researching financial advisors who specialize in retirement planning for people with limited resources, Michael told me during a visit to my house. I think you should meet with someone who can help you make the most of what you have. Michael, what's prompting this sudden interest in financial advisors? I've been having some challenges with my business, and it's made me realize how important it is to have good financial guidance. I want to make sure you're getting the help you need to protect your retirement security. Michael's business challenges were significant. I knew from family conversations that his company was struggling with debt, and he had been working longer hours to try to generate more revenue. His interest in my financial planning coincided with his own financial stress and his concern about building wealth for his family's future. Michael, how serious are your business problems? It's just a rough period. Cash flow is tight, and I'm worried about meeting expenses while trying to grow the company. It makes you think about financial security and planning for the future. Are you looking for investment capital for your business? Michael's hesitation revealed his real interest. I hadn't wanted to ask, but if you had money that wasn't being used productively, business investment could be good for both of us. Michael's concern about my retirement planning wasn't about ensuring my financial security. It was about potentially accessing money that could help solve his business problems and secure his family's financial future. The third clue came from Jennifer's questions about my estate planning and her suggestions about simplifying my financial arrangements. Mom, have you updated your will recently? Jennifer asked during a family dinner. It's important to make everything as organized and current. Why are you asking about my will? I've been thinking about estate planning because of some financial pressures we're facing. The kids' college expenses are going to be enormous, and we're trying to figure out how to manage the costs. Jennifer's concerns about college expenses were legitimate. She had two teenagers who would be attending university in the next few years, and tuition costs had become a significant source of anxiety for her family. Jennifer, how much do you expect college to cost? At least $200,000 for both kids, probably more. We're trying to save money, but it's challenging with everything else we need to pay for. Have you considered education loans or scholarships? We're exploring all options, but family support would make a huge difference. If there were money available that could help with educational expenses, Jennifer's interest in my estate planning wasn't about ensuring my affairs were properly organized. It was about understanding what resources might be available to help with her children's education costs and her family's financial goals. All three of my children had revealed the same pattern. They were experiencing significant financial stress in their own lives, and their sudden concern about my financial management was actually concern about accessing money they believed I had available to help solve their problems. But their approach revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of both my financial situation and my attitudes about money. They assumed I was living on limited resources that needed careful management to avoid poverty, when in reality I was living below my means, while my wealth continued to grow through investments they knew nothing about. More problematically, they assumed that my money was available to solve their financial problems if they could gain control over my financial decisions or convince me that I needed their help managing my resources. Their strategy was to position themselves as financial advisors who could help me make better decisions about my supposedly limited money, while actually gaining access to resources they could use to address their own financial needs and goals. But what they didn't know was that their supposedly financially vulnerable mother had been carefully observing their behavior and was about to reveal information that would completely change the power dynamic in our family relationships. As my children's financial pressures increased and their interest in my money became more obvious, I decided to test their motivations by creating scenarios that would reveal exactly how far they were willing to go to gain control over my financial decisions. The first test involved Patricia's divorce settlement and her increasing hints about needing financial assistance. Patricia, I've been thinking about what you said regarding your legal expenses, I told her during a phone call. If you need help with divorce costs, I might be able to contribute something modest to help you through this difficult time. Mom, that's incredibly generous of you, but I wouldn't want you to spend money you can't afford. How much would be helpful for your legal fees? Patricia's response revealed how much she had been hoping for financial assistance. Well, if you could manage $10,000, that would cover most of my remaining attorney costs and help me settle this more quickly. $10,000? Patricia was asking for what she assumed was a significant portion of my available resources, based on her beliefs about my limited income and modest savings. Patricia, $10,000 would be a substantial expense for someone in my financial situation. I know, Mom, and I hate to ask, but if you have savings that aren't being used for immediate needs, this could really help our family get through this crisis. Patricia's willingness to ask for what she believed was a large percentage of my total resources revealed how desperate her situation was and how much she had been counting on my financial help. But her request also revealed her assumption that I had savings available for family emergencies, money that wasn't essential for my own needs and could be used to help my children with their financial problems. The second test involved Michael's business problems and his hints about needing investment capital. Michael, you mentioned that your business is struggling with cash flow problems, I said during a visit to his office. Would an investment from a family member help stabilize the situation? Mom, I didn't want to put pressure on you, but yes, business investment could make a real difference in our ability to grow and succeed. What kind of investment would be meaningful? Michael's answer revealed his expectations about my resources and his willingness to accept money from someone he believed had limited means. If you could manage $25,000, that would provide enough working capital to get through our current challenges and position us for growth. $25,000? Michael was asking for what he assumed was a major portion of my available money, based on his understanding of my financial situation. Michael, that would be a significant investment for someone with my income level. I know it's a lot to ask, Mom, but this could be good for both of us. You'd be helping the family business succeed, and you'd get a return on your investment that's better than what you're earning in savings accounts. Michael's willingness to ask for such a substantial sum revealed both his financial desperation and his assumption that I had money available for family investments that weren't essential for my own security. The third test involved Jennifer's college planning and her hints about needing educational support for her children. Jennifer, you mentioned that college costs are creating financial stress for your family, I said during a conversation about her teacher's future plans. If I wanted to help with educational expenses, what would be most useful? Mom, any help would be amazing, but I know you need to be careful about your own financial security. What kind of contribution would make a real difference for the kids' education? Jennifer's response revealed her expectations and her willingness to accept money from someone she believed was financially limited. If you could manage to contribute $15,000 toward each child's education, that would cover their first year's expenses and give us time to plan for the remaining costs. $30,000 total. Jennifer was asking for what she assumed was a major financial commitment from someone living on a fixed income. Jennifer, $30,000 would be a substantial commitment for someone in my financial position. I know, Mom, and I feel terrible asking. But educational investment in the grandchildren would be such a meaningful legacy, and it would help our family so much. Jennifer's willingness to request such a large sum revealed her financial anxiety about college costs and her assumption that I had significant savings available for family support. All three tests revealed the same pattern. My children believed I had limited financial resources that required careful management, but they also believed I had substantial savings available for family emergencies, business investments, and educational expenses. Their assumptions were contradictory. If I was truly living on limited income that needed careful budgeting, I wouldn't have tens of thousands of dollars available for family financial assistance. But their willingness to ask for large sums revealed that they had been viewing my money as a resource for solving their own financial problems, while simultaneously positioning themselves as advisors who could help me make better decisions about my supposedly limited means. The chess game was becoming clear. They wanted access to my money for their own needs, while maintaining control over how I spent money on my own needs. They wanted to limit my spending on things they considered unnecessary, while encouraging my spending on things that would benefit them. But what they didn't know was that their mother had been playing a much more sophisticated financial game for decades, and that their assumptions about my resources were about to be revealed as completely incorrect. The revelation I was planning would not only shock them with the extent of my actual wealth, but would also expose their true motivations and force them to confront their own attitudes about money, family, and entitlement. After months of observing my children's financial assumptions and testing their motivations, I decided it was time to reveal the truth about my actual financial situation. But rather than simply announcing my wealth, I chose to let them discover it gradually through a series of revelations that would completely change their understanding of our family's financial dynamics. The first revelation came during a family dinner at my house, where I had prepared an elaborate meal that prompted Patricia to comment on my spending. Mom, this meal must have cost a fortune, Patricia said as we enjoyed lobster, premium steaks, and offensive wine. You really shouldn't be spending this much money on dinner parties. Patricia, what makes you think this meal was expensive? Well, lobster and prime rib aren't exactly budget foods. I'm worried that you're overspending on entertaining when you should be saving money. I smiled and pulled out the receipt from my shopping trip. Patricia, this entire meal cost me less than what you spend on groceries for 1 week. That's impossible, Mom. These ingredients had to cost hundreds of dollars. The lobster came from my friend's seafood business, where I get wholesale prices because I've been investing in his company for 15 years. The beef came from another friend's ranch, where I get premium cuts at cost because I helped finance his business expansion. The wine came from a vineyard I've been supporting since the night. Patricia stared at me as she processed this information. Mom, you invest in businesses? Patricia, I've been investing in local businesses for 30 years. Most of my groceries come from companies I either own shares in or have business relationships with. The conversation continued as I explained my network of business investments and partnerships that provided me with access to premium goods at wholesale prices. What Patricia had assumed was expensive overspending was actually the result of smart business relationships that reduced my costs while supporting local enterprises. But the real shock came when Patricia asked about the magnitude of these investments. Mom, how much money do you have invested in these businesses? Patricia, my business investments are worth approximately $1.2 million, and they generate about $80,000 in annual income. Patricia nearly choked on her wine. Mom, you have over $1 million in business investments. That's just the business investments, Patricia. That doesn't include my stock portfolio, my real estate holdings, or my retirement accounts. The second revelation came the following week, when Michael visited my house and noticed financial documents on my desk. Mom, what are all these investment statements? Those are quarterly reports from my stock portfolio. Michael picked up one of the statements and stared at the numbers. Mom, this account has over $300,000 in it. That's one of my smaller accounts, Michael. I spread my investments across multiple portfolios to diversify risk and maximize returns. How many investment accounts do you have? I pulled out a folder containing statements from all of my investment accounts. I have 12 different investment accounts with various firms, plus individual stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Michael spent the next hour reviewing my investment statements while I explained my portfolio strategy, my risk management approach, and my long-term wealth building philosophy. Mom, according to these statements, your total investment portfolio is worth over $2.5 million. The stock and bond portfolios are currently valued at about $2.8 million, Michael. But that's just one component of my total financial picture. What else is there? There's my real estate holdings, my retirement accounts, my business investments, and my cash reserves. Michael sat in stunned silence as he realized that his supposedly financially limited mother had been managing a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio while he had been worrying about her grocery budget. The third revelation came when Jennifer asked about my charitable donations and suggested I should reduce my giving to preserve my limited resources. Mom, I found receipts for over $5,000 in charitable donations this year, Jennifer said during a phone call. You really can't afford to be this generous with your limited income. Jennifer, my charitable giving this year will be approximately $40,000. $40,000? Mom, that's more than many people's entire annual income. Jennifer, my charitable giving is funded by investment income, not by my living expenses. I give away about 15% of my annual investment returns. Mom, how much investment income do you earn each year? My investments generate approximately $270,000 in annual income. Jennifer was silent for so long that I thought the call had been disconnected. Mom, did you just say you earn over $250,000 each year from investments? That's just the investment income, Jennifer. That doesn't include my pension, my Social Security, or the income from my business partnerships. Mom, what is your total annual income? My total annual income is approximately $320,000. After taxes and charitable giving, I live on about $200,000 per year. Jennifer's response revealed how completely her assumptions about my financial situation had been incorrect. Mom, you earn more money in 1 year than most families earn in 5 years. Jennifer, I've been building wealth for 50 years through careful investing, smart business decisions, and living below my means. The lifestyle you see is the result of choosing to spend modestly while my investments grew. But the most comprehensive revelation came when all 3 children demanded a complete accounting of my financial situation. Mom, we need to understand exactly what your financial picture looks like, Patricia said during an emergency family meeting they had called to discuss my financial disclosures. I had prepared a complete financial summary that detailed every aspect of my wealth and income. My total net worth is approximately $4.7 million, I announced, handing them each a copy of my financial statement. The document detailed investment portfolios worth $2.8 million, real estate holdings worth $1.1 million, business investments worth $1.2 million, retirement accounts worth $400,000, cash reserves worth $200,000, annual income of $3, annual expenses of $7, annual charitable giving of $40,000. My children stared at the numbers in complete shock, realizing that their supposedly financially vulnerable mother was wealthier than all of them combined and was earning more money each year than any of them had ever made. Mom, Michael said quietly, you're rich. I'm financially independent, Michael. I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life, to handle any medical expenses or care needs that might arise, and to leave substantial inheritances if I choose to. The revelation completely changed the dynamic of our family relationships and forced my children to confront their own assumptions, motivations, and attitudes about money and entitlement. But it also raised questions about why I had kept my wealth secret and what their discovery of my financial independence would mean for our future relationships. The revelation of my true financial status led to the most difficult conversation I had ever had with my children, as they struggled to process not only the extent of my wealth, but also the implications of their own behavior and assumptions over the past year. Mom, why did you hide this from us? Patricia asked, still holding the financial statement that had shattered her understanding of our family's economic situation. I didn't hide it, Patricia. I simply didn't volunteer information about my private financial affairs. But you let us think you were struggling financially, Michael protested. You let us worry about your ability to afford groceries and utilities. Michael, I never told you I was struggling financially. You made assumptions about my situation based on my lifestyle choices. But Mom, Jennifer interjected, you live like someone who's trying to stretch every dollar. You shop at discount stores. You drive an old car. You live in a modest house. Jennifer, I live modestly because I prefer simplicity, not because I can't afford luxury. Living below your means is how you build wealth, not how you struggle with poverty. The conversation revealed the fundamental disconnect between my actual financial philosophy and my children's assumptions about my situation. I had chosen to live frugally because frugality had enabled me to accumulate wealth. They had interpreted my frugality as evidence of financial limitation rather than evidence of financial discipline. But their confusion about my lifestyle choices was less concerning than their reactions to the discovery of my wealth. Mom, if you have all this money, why haven't you been helping us with our financial problems? Patricia portrayed. I've been struggling with divorce expenses, and you could have solved my problems with money that's just sitting in investment accounts. Patricia, my money is not just sitting in investment accounts. It's working to generate income and build wealth, and your financial problems are not my responsibility to solve. But we're your children, Michael added. If you have the resources to help us, shouldn't family come first? Michael, family does come first. That's why I've been building wealth to ensure my own financial security, so I never become a burden on my children, and to potentially leave inheritances that could benefit your families in the future. But what good does it do us if you're just hoarding money instead of using it to help when we need it? Jennifer asked with growing frustration. Jennifer, I'm not hoarding money. I'm managing it responsibly. And I'm not obligated to sacrifice my financial security to solve your temporary financial challenges. The conversation was revealing their true attitudes about my money and their expectations about my obligations to solve their financial problems. Patricia became more direct in her demands. Mom, I need $25,000 to finalize my divorce settlement. You have almost $5 million. This is a tiny amount for you, but a huge help for me. Patricia, the fact that I have substantial wealth doesn't mean I'm obligated to pay for your divorce. But you could solve my entire problem with money that wouldn't even make a dent in your portfolio. Patricia, your divorce expenses are the consequence of your marriage choices. They're not an emergency that requires me to liquidate investments to bail you out. Michael joined Patricia's argument. Mom, my business could be really successful with the right capital investment. You could invest $50,000 and earn better returns than you're getting in some of your conservative investments. Michael, I already have business investments that I've researched carefully and that fit my risk tolerance. I'm not interested in investing in your business just because you need money. But you could help your son succeed while making money for yourself. Michael, if your business were a good investment opportunity, you would be able to attract investors who aren't family members. The fact that you're asking me suggests that you want family money rather than investor money. Jennifer's approach was different, but equally presumptuous. Mom, you could pay for both kids' college educations without affecting your lifestyle at all. It would be life-changing for our family and meaningless to your financial situation. Jennifer, college expenses are the responsibility of parents, not grandparents. You and your husband chose to have children, which means you chose to accept the financial obligations that come with raising them. But you have the money just sitting there, earning investment returns when it could be helping your grandchildren get an education. Jennifer, my investments aren't just sitting there. They're providing the financial security that ensures I won't need financial support from my children as I age. They're also growing to potentially provide inheritances for all of you in the future. The conversation continued with each of my children presenting increasingly aggressive arguments for why my wealth should be used to solve their immediate financial problems. They argued that family obligations required me to help them. They claimed that my money was meaningless to me, but life-changing for them. They suggested that I was being selfish by maintaining investments instead of helping family members. They implied that my financial independence was less important than their financial difficulties. But their arguments revealed a fundamental entitlement mentality. They believed that my wealth belonged to them by virtue of being my children, and that I was obligated to use my resources to solve their problems regardless of my own financial goals or principles. "Let me be very clear about something," I said as their demands became more insistent. "My money is not your money. My wealth is not your emergency fund. My investments are not your solution to poor financial planning." "But Mom," Patricia protested, "we're not strangers asking for handouts. We're your children who need help." "Patricia, being my children gives you my love, not my money. Being my family means I want you to succeed, not that I'm obligated to fund your success. So you're just going to sit on millions of dollars while your own children struggle financially?" Michael asked with obvious anger. "Michael, I'm going to manage my money responsibly, which includes not enabling adult children who haven't learned to manage their own financial affairs." The conversation ended with my children understanding that their discovery of my wealth would not automatically grant them access to my resources, and that their financial problems remained their responsibility to solve. But it also marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in our family relationships, as they were forced to confront their own attitudes about money, entitlement, and the obligations that come with family relationships. 1 year after revealing my true financial status, our family had settled into a new dynamic that was both more honest and more complicated than our previous relationships. My children had been forced to confront their own assumptions about money, family obligations, and the entitlements they had believed came with being my children. The changes in each of their approaches to our relationship had been gradual but significant. Patricia had initially gone through what could only be described as the stages of grief regarding my financial revelation. Denial gave way to anger, then bargaining, then depression, and finally acceptance that my money was not the solution to her financial problems. "Mom, I owe you an apology," Patricia said during a phone conversation 6 months after our confrontation. "I realize now that I was treating you like a bank account instead of like a person." "What made you understand that?" "When I finally handled my divorce settlement using my own resources and my own problem-solving abilities, I felt proud of myself in a way I haven't felt in years. If you had just given me the money, I would have learned nothing about managing my own financial challenges." Patricia's divorce had been finalized through her own efforts, using payment plans with her attorney, selling some of her possessions, and borrowing from her retirement account. The process had been difficult, but it had restored her confidence in her own ability to handle financial crises. "Patricia, how do you feel about managing your finances independently now?" "Empowered. For the first time in my adult life, I solved a major financial problem without asking my parents for help. I proved to myself that I'm capable of handling whatever challenges come up." Patricia's growth had extended beyond her divorce settlement to a complete reassessment of her financial habits and goals. She had started budgeting carefully, building an emergency fund, and making decisions based on her own resources rather than counting on family support. Michael's evolution was different but equally meaningful. The discovery that his supposedly struggling mother was actually a sophisticated investor had forced him to examine his own financial competence and business strategies. "Mom, I need to admit something," Michael said during a visit to my house 8 months after the revelation. "Learning about your investment success made me realize how little I actually know about building wealth." "What do you mean?" "I've been so focused on earning money that I never learned how to keep it and grow it. You've been earning less than me for most of our adult lives, but you've built more wealth than I ever imagined was possible." Michael had begun studying investing and wealth-building strategies, using books, courses, and financial advisors to learn skills he had never developed during his focus on business income. "Michael, what have you learned about the difference between earning money and building wealth?" "That earning money is about what comes in, but building wealth is about what you keep and how you make it grow. You've been living on a fraction of your income while investing the rest. I've been spending everything I earn and assuming that earning more was the solution to financial problems." Michael's business problems had been resolved not through family investment, but through his own improved financial management and a better understanding of cash flow, expenses, and profit margins. Jennifer's journey had been the most complex because it required her to confront her expectations about grandparent contributions to her children's expenses. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said about parental responsibility for children's expenses. Jennifer said during a family dinner 9 months after our confrontation. What conclusions have you reached? That I was trying to outsource my financial responsibilities to you instead of accepting that providing for my children is my job, not yours. Jennifer and her husband had developed a comprehensive plan for funding their children's college educations through their own savings, the children's part-time work, scholarships, and educational loans. Jennifer, how do you feel about funding your children's education independently? Proud. And I think it's better for the kids too. They're more motivated to get scholarships and make good grades when they know their education isn't just being handed to them by grandparents. But the most significant change was in how all three of my children viewed my lifestyle choices and financial decisions. Mom, I understand now why you live the way you do, Patricia said during our most recent family gathering. You're not poor, you're disciplined, you're not struggling, you're strategic. What helped you understand that? Realizing that every dollar you don't spend on luxury is a dollar that's working to build wealth and security. Your modest lifestyle isn't about limitation. It's about choice and long-term thinking. My children had also developed a new appreciation for the financial independence I had achieved and the security it provided for our entire family. Mom, knowing that you're financially secure actually reduces stress for all of us, Michael observed. We don't have to worry about your retirement, your healthcare costs, or your ability to maintain your independence as you age. And knowing that you built this wealth through smart decisions over decades is inspiring, Jennifer added. You've shown us that wealth isn't about luck or inheritance. It's about discipline, patience, and making good choices consistently over time. But the most important outcome was the conversation we had about inheritance and their expectations about my estate. Mom, we need to talk about something that's been bothering all of us, Patricia said during a family meeting 1 year after the revelation. We feel terrible about how we acted when we discovered your wealth, and we want you to know that we don't expect anything from your estate. What do you mean? We mean that we hope you'll spend your money on yourself, on your own happiness and comfort, without worrying about leaving us inheritances, Michael explained. You've already given us everything we needed by raising us to be independent adults. And we want you to know that we're capable of building our own wealth and taking care of our own families. Jennifer added, we don't need your money to be successful or happy. Their statements were genuine and represented a complete transformation from their earlier attitudes about my financial obligations to them. I appreciate that, I told them, but I want you to understand something about my wealth-building philosophy. I explained that my financial success had been driven not by a desire to accumulate money for its own sake, but by a commitment to creating security and options for myself and my family. My wealth gives me the freedom to live independently, to be generous with causes I care about, to handle any medical or care expenses that might arise, and to leave inheritances if I choose to. But Mom, Patricia said, we don't want you to feel obligated to leave us money just because you have it. Patricia, I don't feel obligated to leave you money, but I may choose to leave you money because I want to give you opportunities and security that you might not be able to create on your own. I had decided to share my current estate planning with them, not to create expectations, but to help them understand my thinking about wealth and family responsibility. I'm currently planning to leave each of you approximately $1 million when I die, while giving substantial amounts to charitable causes that have been important to me throughout my life. The numbers were staggering to them, but their reactions showed how much their attitudes had changed. Mom, that's incredibly generous, Michael said. But we want you to know that we'll be grateful for whatever you decide to leave us, even if it's nothing. And we want you to spend money on yourself first, Jennifer added. Travel, experiences, luxury, whatever makes you happy. You've earned the right to enjoy your wealth. The most important gift you've given us, Patricia concluded, isn't money. It's the example of how to build financial security through discipline and smart decisions. That's worth more than any inheritance. But the conversation also addressed the lessons they had learned about money, family relationships, and personal responsibility. Mom, what you taught us by revealing your wealth the way you did was more valuable than just giving us money would have been, Michael reflected. You showed us our own attitudes about entitlement, and you forced us to grow up financially. You also showed us that financial independence is possible through patient, consistent wealth building rather than through family bailouts. Jennifer added, and you demonstrated that love doesn't mean solving other people's financial problems for them, Patricia concluded. Real love means believing that people are capable of solving their own problems and growing stronger through the process. The revelation had also changed how my children viewed their own relationships with money and their responsibilities to their own children. I want my kids to learn the same lessons you taught us, Jennifer said. I want them to understand that wealth comes from discipline and good choices, not from family handouts. And I want to build wealth the way you did, Michael added, so that my children can have the same financial security and independence that you've created for yourself. Most importantly, Patricia concluded, I want to have the same kind of relationship with money that you have, using it as a tool for freedom and security, not as a source of stress or conflict. 2 years after the revelation, my children had developed their own wealth-building strategies, improved their financial management skills, and created more stable financial foundations for their families. But the most meaningful outcome was the restoration of our family relationships based on honesty rather than assumptions, and respect rather than entitlement. Mom, Patricia said during our most recent conversation, thank you for teaching us that financial independence is the greatest fit you can give yourself and your family. You've shown us that wealth isn't about having money to spend. It's about having the freedom to make choices based on what's right rather than what's affordable. My decision to reveal my wealth had been risky, but it had ultimately strengthened our family bonds by forcing everyone to confront their true attitudes about money, responsibility, and love. And that, my dear listeners, is how I turned my family's assumptions about my financial limitations into lessons about wealth, independence, and the difference between supporting people you love and enabling their poor financial decisions. The greatest wealth isn't money, it's the freedom that comes from financial independence, the peace of mind that comes from security, and the knowledge that you've built something meaningful through your own efforts and choices. Never let anyone convince you that living modestly means living poorly, that saving money means missing out on life, or that building wealth is selfish or unnecessary. Financial independence gives you options, security, and the ability to be generous on your own terms, rather than dependent on others' generosity. Most importantly, never let family members treat your money as their solution to problems they're capable of solving themselves. Love means believing that people can grow stronger through challenges, not protecting them from the growth that comes through handling their own responsibilities. I have more stories about building wealth quietly, the difference between helping and enabling, and the freedom that comes from financial independence. So subscribe to Betty's True Stories, because the best legacy you can leave your family isn't money. It's the knowledge that they're capable of creating their own security and success. Growing older with financial independence means having choices, maintaining dignity, and being able to support causes and people you care about without sacrificing your own security. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your children is the confidence that comes from proving they don't need your money to succeed in life.